Hello everyone, I'm going to be exploring the 3 semester block lesson plan template as well as an example of the lesson plan on this side over here. So here's the blank lesson plan template, and on the left and on the right is an example of a social science lesson that was provided for us. So to begin, the top part is just the basic information such as name of the teacher, lesson number 1 of whatever number of lessons in that lesson segment, the title of the unit and lesson, duration of lesson, and grade level and subjects. So here we can see that this teacher filled out those things such as 55 minutes for how long the lesson would last, and ninth grade geography and its case study analysis. So to continue, the central focus of the unit, so this is basically where you talk about the literacy strategy focus, what students are going to focus on in reading and writing, etc. And then related skills that support the use of the strategy, as well as the content focus. So here we can see that they put that students will fill in a case study analysis chart using unit vocabulary terms to answer specific questions about why development has not equally reached all parts of the world. As for related skills, they wrote students will relate the development of different parts of the world to their own lives and circumstances. And for content focus, it is how the development has affected parts of the world differently using different indicators and indexes. As for standards, this is where you basically just list any relevant standards that apply to this lesson. These could be Common Core state standards, as well as in my case, it would be social science history standards, as well as any ELD standards for English learners in the class. So here they listed the National Geography Standards, Sweetwater Unified Geography Standards, which is specific for the Sweetwater district, and also Common Core standards, state standards. So since there's no ELD standards, we can assume that there are no English learners in the class, but it's important to remember that even if you have just one English learner in the class, you must list the ELD standard as well. As for instructional learning objectives, basically the objectives are what students will be able to do as a result of this lesson. So they must directly be in line with the central focus as well as the standards and any activities and assessments that are going to be covered in the lesson. So here, whatever instructional learning objective you place here, you have to make sure that you are able to assess students either formally or informally on this side right here, where the students will demonstrate their learning. So here we can see that students will determine how the impacts of the Industrial Revolution have affected different parts of the world, and there's an informal check for understanding or an informal assessment in which students will share out their findings in a whole class discussion at the end of class. And the next objective, students will be able to explain why the Industrial Revolution impacted the world differently and why it is important to both know and care about such impacts. And there's a formal assessment to go along with this, in which students will complete the case study analysis chart. And then next we see the language function and demands section. So here you're supposed to consider the importance of speaking, listening, reading, and or writing. So you basically write whatever language function you're having students use and what they need to develop and practice for the literacy strategy within the central focus. So going back to the beginning part of this lesson template as well. So everything kind of connects, you can see as you go through the template. And it should also be derived from the objectives. So here we see that the language function listed is explain. And on the other side, you're supposed to list any other additional language demands that has to do with vocabulary, syntax, or discourse. So here they listed academic vocabulary as well as the syntax right there. So moving on to resources and materials, this section is pretty straightforward, just whatever resources and materials that are going to be necessary to complete the lesson. Ensure that you list them all here, as well as key instructional materials. You're supposed to also list them at the end of the lesson plan as well. So here we could see that there are booklets and the charts as well for the students. Student prior knowledge. So here you basically address any of the prior knowledge from previous classes, school years, skills, even personal and cultural assets that students already have with them that they're bringing into the classroom. So what they know already, or what can they do? You basically ask yourself those questions. What are they still learning to do? And you're essentially connecting their skills and knowledge to what the topic of this lesson will be. So for example, on this side, we see how student prior knowledge is the previous lessons focused on the origins of the Industrial Revolution and the underlying differences between a developed nation and a developing nation. And then moving forward to, I guess, more of the meat of the lesson plan. And this would be the instructional strategies and learning tasks to support learning. So introduction and anticipatory set. So you must transition from a previous activity. So you will be building upon the knowledge from the previous activity as well, which also has to do with student prior knowledge. So we could see how the flow of that, it really makes sense in that case, as well as a hook purpose for learning. So you're basically, what are you going to do to engage students at the beginning of the lesson so that you can ensure that they're going to be paying attention, they're going to be excited about learning, and they're going to actually care about what they're learning. So this is very important as well. So here we could see how the previous lesson showed us video that discussed how the world has developed over time and which countries are still developing. The previous lesson transitions into this lesson because it gave an interactive and visual display of the content in the booklets the students will use for the activity in today's lesson, and their hook for or purpose for learning. So they wrote, I take the first 5 minutes of class each day and answer college-related questions, which I find very helpful and important for students to know about college and stuff if they're interested in any way of attending. For this lesson, I will focus the topic on out-of-country colleges and ask the students if they think that all students in all countries have the same opportunities as they do. This will transition into the discussion of unequal development with only one indicator being education. So I feel like that's a very interesting way to engage students at the beginning of the lesson. Next, we go into the I do portion, which on the lesson plan, it is stated as focused instruction modeling. So essentially how the teacher will present or teach the content and skills to the students prior to them engaging in the material themselves. So here, students will be paired up, work together for the activity. She'll pass out the charts and explain how it is formatted, what are students expected to do, and then pass out the other materials as well. And then we have differentiating and scaffolds for any students with IEPs, 504 plans, English learners, struggling students, underperforming students, or gifted and advanced students. So here they ensure that they have created the student pairs based on grade, class participation, and work ethic. And then to continue, we have the guided instruction in practice. So here it's we do. So how will you provide student opportunities to practice what you taught in a supportive and collaborative learning environment? So essentially you're working alongside with the students, ensuring that they have, if they have any questions, that their needs are met. So here we can see that she will check for understanding by walking around the room, ensure that students are doing what they're supposed to do, and differentiating scaffolds. Again, here we can see that the standard living booklets come in 3 categories of reading for reading level or Lexile. She would already have paired students with peers of similar learning reading levels to ensure that they're supported in that sense. And then independent practice. So how will students have opportunity to master what you taught them? So here the students will give a brief description of their case study. They could share a few details, and more differentiating scaffolds. More advanced will be called on to give details to the question. The rest of the class will take notes. And then closure, finally, is how you will bring the lesson to an end. How will you transition students to the next activity? So you can ask daily inquiry question like she did over here, or assign any homework, allude to the next lesson, things like that. Thank you.